Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Bojarnoff. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and I am with
Logan at Hoagie99.
And you can also find the team and the show on Twitter at Jablam Hockey, and of course on our website, jablamhockey.com. Go to the website. You can find us on our overtime page, and you can subscribe to us right on there. But you can also check out our new blogs. I wrote a new blog on the Leafs report card, so I gave a report card and a little bit of a blurb about each Leaf that's been playing, and of course not Matthews because he only played 11 games up until tonight, so we'll talk about that in a bit. And we've got some other new blogs coming in, so go check that out. Check out our blogs and check out all our old episodes and, of course, our Team ISOs. Logan, what's going on new with you, sir?
Oh, nothing new. Having a beer after a day of work.
That's supposed to be something new that you're having a beer?
No, it's something routine, I guess.
I'm trying to actually stop because my it's not looking good for me with health-wise, so I'm actually trying to see if I can stop for a while at least, maybe forever. We'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, I might have to switch to something medicinal.
Yeah, I've never done that really, so we'll see. But I did go check out the new, it's not really new, it's been out for a while, the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. I really liked it.
Did you? I got good reviews.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just me being a little uber sensitive, but I actually cried like once or twice, almost kind of cried. But yeah, it was, you know what? I think the movie itself wasn't the best it could have been, in my opinion. They mashed it up and they jammed it to 2 hours and made it a little, like, things happened that didn't need to happen, especially in weird orders kind of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been hearing too. Like, everything's done well and it's acted really well as well, but it just seems like the way they cut it up makes it a bit odd.
Yeah.
The choices they made were a bit odd.
Yeah, but yeah, Rami Malek is great as Freddy, and the whole crew and everything, and the story itself is great. So
yeah, I
still recommend people watching it. I still love the movie, but it just seemed a little off with some of the story. But yeah, it's expected. It's a Hollywood movie. One thing that I did do with the Black Friday thing, and I talked about it last week, was I did buy the 75-inch Samsung TV, and that was a hassle bringing that in the house.
Yeah, I can imagine. Mine's, I think it's 60, and I had to move it from my basement apartment to the 15-story apartment where I now live with my girlfriend, and yeah, that was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a 75-inch.
So we made sure that I was allowed to use my old FJ Cruiser, and it's good because the distribution center is just down the road from us. It's not even more than 10 minutes. And of course, I purchased it at work downtown, and I made sure that I could pick it up from the distribution center. So that's why it was like 3 days later picking it up, which is fine. But yeah, I could barely fit in my FJ, and obviously the FJ, the door has the whole thing where it swings open to the like the left, the back door. Yeah. So that was like open as we were going home. So it wasn't too bad, but it was pretty jam-packed. Me and my dad taking it home. It was pretty ridiculous. And then bringing it into the house was a little wild. And it's huge. It's magnificent of a beast, this thing. So I was thinking about bringing it to the basement, and I think my table works better because their table is a little bit too short. So we have to put this big, huge ply of wood on top of the table so it would sit properly, of course. Because it sits on two legs. And my 60-inch that I have down here just has the one base to it.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a dilemma. But wow, it's huge. And I like to lean down as I'm sitting, and now that we've propped it up on the table, it's a little too high, especially with how big the TV is. And you're kind of like, it feels like you're almost in a movie theater. The way your neck is a little bit looking up at the big, huge monitor.
Yeah, you're in the front row of a movie theater.
Oh, man, but it was enjoying watching the Maple Leafs kick some butt against the Sharks on that big, huge, giant TV.
I guess that's a good way to get your TV initiated.
Yes, it is. All right, what do we have this episode? We'll be team ISOing the St. Louis Blues with Laura at Hildy Mack. Of course, she's from St. Louis Game Time, so we'll be talking about the Blues, their struggles, and what's going on with their goaltending and their defense. And, of course, Ryan O'Reilly. He's been playing well. We've got a Jublam Junior Hockey update and guest, Brock Otten, and he's the man behind the OHL Prospects site. So he's got a good view of what's going on with the OHL players. And we'll talk a little bit about World Juniors Hockey and who could be an impact player on that team and who might be on the outside looking in. And, of course, at the end of the episode, we'll have a friendly bet and mailbag. But first, trending now. Let's get into some trending now. Before we get into some Leaf talk, of course, what? The Carolina Thunderbirds of the Federal Hockey League, they put in a new rule for the remaining home games, and it's a peculiar one. What is it, Logan?
And I had never even heard of this team before, FHL. So they're going to do shootouts at the start of every home game to determine the winner of a game if it ever gets to past overtime. I don't understand.
So apparently, I guess their attendance is not poor, but at the beginning of games, people come late.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with the game itself. Maybe it's traffic. Maybe it's time. Maybe move the games to 7:30 or 8. Maybe that will help.
Yeah.
But this is ridiculous.
And it's not like, well, they do say, like, oh, people like shootouts, so we're going to, at least this way we get to have one every game. It's like, yeah, I guess, but that's, usually you don't need it unless you go to past over, like 3-on-3 overtime, which is kind of rare nowadays, but.
Wow.
See how it works, I guess. Like, stay tuned. We'll have to do an update in a couple weeks or a month or next year or something like that to see if attendance actually rose.
Well, I think this was all part of their plan. It was a PR move in that we've never heard of this team, and now we've all heard of this team. We've talked about this team because of this crazy rule. All right. So I think it's ridiculous, and most of the games won't go into overtime. So whatever. Good luck with that one.
I guess the fans will like it, the ones that do show up.
Yeah. All right. Leafs Twitter blew up, of course, when on the game that just happened earlier on, was recording this on Wednesday night late. Elliot Friedman decides to say on the Leafs broadcast on Sportsnet, one thing I do believe, no matter what happens, is that this will be William Nylander's final season as a Maple Leaf. Wow.
I mean, there's precedent to back it up. That was, now I'm blanking on who was it. Essentially, the last couple holdouts who have held out.
You mean like the tourist thing and maybe Trouba thing?
Essentially, yeah, they held out for not as long as Nylander. They signed a deal and then were shipped out. Well,
Trouba ended up staying. Tourist was eventually traded like within that week, though.
Yeah.
So this is like totally different. And I still think this all comes down to because of the cap. And if the Leafs do end up signing Nylander to a 6 years, roughly 6.8 whatever contract, I think it still works out for the Leafs. And I don't know how much. I think some of these media guys, now maybe not all of them, but a lot of them think Matthews and Marner are going to be making gajillion dollars, like these 10s and 13s and $15 million going here. None of that's really going to happen in my mind. They will be signing, bigger contracts, obviously, than the average, player. But I think they could easily fit them all three. The only way I can kind of see this where they do maybe move Nylander is if he gets outplayed by players that won't be getting as highly as a cap hit. If Kapanen and Janssen and a few of the other guys and maybe some younger guys step onto the team, outproduce, you don't expect them to be 20 goal scorers, but they are, then maybe you move him. But no, he's way too good to move, especially if you sign him to a 6.8 contract for 6 years.
Yeah, if you give him 6 years, like if you sign him for 2 and maybe that's an excuse to ship him out because then he's going to ask for that bridge contract. He's going to ask for more than what he made those 2 if he outperforms Marner and Matthews even. So maybe then you ship him out. But if you sign him for 6 years, there's no reason to ship him out as far as I know. Marner's playing well, so maybe he gets a Draisaitl contract, but
yeah. The thing that really bothers me is that he kind of it seems like it's more of like a personal comment that he makes, and he doesn't really say why he says it. He just blurps it out after he comments about the contract. At the end of it, he just drops his bombshell and just doesn't answer why exactly he thinks this.
Well, and some of the analysts as well are speculating that that Nylander will be traded because it's I don't know if it's a pride thing or he's not a team player type of thing, but I don't know. I don't think that Nylander, once he's signed, Nylander will be a full team player. He won't want to be anywhere else type of thing. So
yeah, it just seems that he actually does still want to play for Leafs, and we haven't seen anything otherwise, so I don't know what the issue is here. All right, let's go on to another Maple Leaf who's very tenacious, and of course, really irks, apparently, the San Jose Sharks. We all know what happened last year with, of course, and it seems like, obviously, Thornton started it, Thornton might have given him a bit of a slash, Kadri a shove, and then Thornton wants to fight Kadri, and he does. Kadri somehow yanks some of his beard out as he's trying to grab the jersey.
Yeah, as he's flailing around, because he was being tossed around by a man 30 pounds heavier than he is. Get full props to Kadri in that fight for taking it. He could have just turtled or cowered or whatever, but that's definitely not his style. Yeah. And Kadri doesn't just irk the Shark players. He irks 30 other teams in the league when he plays against them. So it's not just the Sharks that's upset with Kadri either. Mm-hmm. That's the way he plays.
But 2 weeks ago when they had their rematch, a year later, they are still very angry at Kadri. It seems like that is why. And they pretty much DeBoer ices Goodrow to start the game against Kadri, and he pretty much goes right after him. The rest of the game, Timo Meier, Thornton, the rest of the teams, they're all going after Kadri. They get stupid penalties, and the Leafs win and capitalize on those advantages. Going into tonight's game, pretty much almost the same thing happens. Before the game, DeBoer gets interviewed, and he said good things. He goes, I like Kadri, and I guess they won the I wasn't sure if it was the OHL championship for London or if it was for the national one for the CHL, one or the other. But and he says good things about Kadri, but he says, quote, I hope when Naz is 38 and playing on reconstructed knees and had the career that Joe's had, that the next generation of player gives Naz the same amount of respect that he deserves and has earned, and that as a lesson.
I like that quote.
But at the same time, these guys are Kadri's still in their heads. If they're quoted on saying this, even Thornton, they asked him and if he has any issues with Kadri fighting him last season, and he says, no, not at all. He smiles, and he says, we'll see what happens tonight, too. It's a hockey game. You never know what can happen.
A little gamesmanship. It's great. I love it.
It is great, but at the same time, the Sharks aren't playing the game. They're letting their emotions take over them in my mind. And the Leafs, which is, I don't know why. This is a whole nother story, and we can talk about it some other day. Leafs, I don't know why, but they're in like the bottom two in power plays. The way they play and the way they're skilled, I don't know how they're at the bottom. And even Pittsburgh apparently is down there too. It makes no sense that they're getting so few power plays. But when they are, and maybe the refs are trying, let's not give the Leafs so many power plays because then they're just going to destroy other teams. That could be possible. But so they're not calling as many power plays. But against San Jose, we're getting them, and they're capitalizing on them because San Jose is not concentrating and focusing on the game itself.
Like Leafs may be too quick for these guys to catch up to them. Maybe that's why they're not getting penalties called against them. I don't know. But yeah, I kind of blame those comments on the media, though. Like, they're going to ask Thornton, they're going to ask DeBoer every question they can. You know, TSN, Sportsnet, Leafs TV, Toronto Star, Edmonton Sun. Everyone got a Leaf reporter. Everyone's got two Leaf reporters. So somebody asks one question and it sticks out, and they get a funny answer, and that's what everybody runs with for the 2 days or whatever. So I just think their comments. I don't know if Kadri's necessarily in their head. They were the game in San Jose, but it looks like I think they didn't really run him tonight, or Wednesday night.
Yeah, you're right. They didn't push too much the Kadri thing tonight,
but they were also down by like 3 goals in that first period. So
yeah, you don't want to get into even further penalty trouble, and then you're way behind. All right, so some players are back, and yay for the Montreal Canadiens. Shea Weber is back. I think he's now the 31st captain of the Montreal Canadiens, and finally gets to play a game with the C on his jersey for the Rouge, Bleu, and Blanc. He looked good. He looked very good. 3 shots, over 25 minutes of action, got an assist, and I even thought he played great overall. He had chances of scoring a goal, an assist. So good for the Habs, and I think this could work out really well for them.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the game. Definitely the last couple minutes, and Weber was trying to tee up a few shots there. And they looked like shots that Weber has taken in the past, and that they were low, hard, and could hurt you. 25 minutes for a guy coming back over a year, over like almost a full season, spanning 2 seasons. I thought someone was telling me. That's not bad. I mean, of course, Matthews said he was going to ease himself into the game as well, and got 2 goals and an assist, and deked out a few people along the way too. So he didn't really ease himself back in either.
Well, Matthews did only play like less than 15 minutes, and most of it was power play time since they got it, and that's what he jumped on. So that helped.
Yeah.
But it's good news for Hab fans, and Weber's back. And yeah, as you're saying, Matthews is back. And it was funny because we're going to be talking about it on next week's show with guest Hannick, who's a player of Chell and on Twitch. That it was funny because they were asking Matthews, and you could tell he was really itching to get in the lineup, and everybody was happy that he's like, I think Kristen Shilton asked him about his anticipation for the game, and he said, I think just excitement. It feels like forever. Just nice to be back with the team. We've been playing really well lately, so just to be back in the lineup is exciting for myself. But they've also asked pretty much them and Matthews about what he's been doing, and obviously his off-ice training and making sure he's game ready. But also he's been saying that they've been playing Call of Duty and etc. So they've been gaming a lot. Of course. And that's how they keep in contact with some of their buddies. Like Werenski, McAvoy, Kachuk, and Matthews. I guess they play games together and they keep in contact with them. And that's what I actually have been doing with my buddies too. Because it's a good way to just kind of like chill out and hang out with buddies and play video games at the same time. When you log in and you get to, talk to them at the same time, see what they're doing, and actually play the games that you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, Matthews played great.
Yeah, he. How long? I think like they said it would be 4 weeks. I didn't really believe it when they said it, but it's been I guess way too long for Leaf fans, essentially.
Yeah, it was kind of odd, too, because when it came out, and it was like 3 days right after the injury happened, it was like, he's going to be out minimum 4 weeks. And that was pretty much it. And then when he was slowly coming back and he's been in, the red jersey for like over a week and practicing with the Leafs, I thought, okay, maybe it might be soon. But I remember they kept on saying minimum. So I thought, it might actually be 6 weeks, because they might let him ease in. But he looked fine. He looked really
fine. Yeah, it looked fine to me. He looked
game ready.
Matthews of old, even though he's only 20-some, 21, 22, not even.
And Ron Hextall is let go by the Philadelphia Flyers. I just mentioned it, I think, on my last podcast, that the only other coach, because all the coaches have been fired recently, the only other coach I would think that would be fired would be Dave Hextall. And in letting Hextall go, I don't know. I still feel that he's done a fairly good job, and he's really rebuilt their up-and-coming players and their AHL depth and everything compared to the way it was before. But I guess the only thing he's been lacking is, and the question mark is, goaltending. And maybe, the president, Paul Holmgren, maybe he feels that he should have brought Carter Hart up already. Like, I don't know.
They seem to want this magical goalie that just, and it happens for some teams, like just comes the backup that comes out of nowhere to steal a spot. But they haven't gotten lucky with their revolving door goaltender system. And it's not the goalie's fault. I don't think it's Hextall's fault, or they just, maybe it's the defense's fault. I don't know. Like, they just don't seem to be stopping pucks.
Yeah, I guess maybe their defense is maybe either lacking, or maybe some of them, like Gossesbear, are a little bit more too offensive-minded, right?
Yeah.
So there's something lacking there also maybe in the coaching system, right?
Yeah, that's true.
In terms of, like, they're pressuring too much. There's too much of a forecheck going on. There's guys maybe like a Voracek who aren't fully involved in the game at all times and, helping back check. And, the defensive structure is not there, and it doesn't help the goaltending as well. But, it's been a while since you've seen a good goaltender in the Flyers. Maybe it's been as long as since Hextall was there.
I've heard that this week as well. Like, the last good goaltender out of Philly may have actually been Ron Hextall.
Sad to say for Philly fans, but maybe it has been. We'll get more into that maybe next week if we have a Team ASO Flyers. All right, time for another Team ISO. It's where we specifically isolate and talk about one team, and we go into the blogospheres and we get a better view of that team, not just mine. And today's guest is Laura. You can find her on Twitter at HildyMac. That's HILDYMAC. She is a manager at St. Louis Game Time. So, of course, we're talking about the St. Louis Blues. Welcome back to the show, Laura.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Obviously, I'm enjoying Matthews coming back to the Maple Leafs roster.
I'm glad to see him back.
Yeah, he's one beauty, and we need to see more of him for sure. But let's get into the Blues. And before we get into the coaching move, let's push that way back and talk about that a little bit later on. Okay. The Blues themselves, not playing well so far this year. No. It's been a struggle. They're at the bottom. Or near the bottom at least. Of course, if we go into the offseason, they just failed to make the playoffs by only 1 point behind McKinnon's Avalanche. So the Blues, of course, had an interesting off-season. On July 1st, of course, they made the big move, bringing in Ryan O'Reilly while moving some cap out. They also go and sign David Perron, one of my favorite guys. He comes back to the Blues again. What is this? The third time? $4 million for 4 years. They bring in ex-Maple Leaf, Tyler Bozak. I think it's $5 million each per year for 3 years. And, of course, they bring in Chad Johnson as the backup. Was that their biggest and maybe worst move, not bring back Carter Hutton? I know, we already know, Jake Allen had a fairly bad year last year and a solid one for Hutton, and they almost made the playoffs with that. Why not bring him back, or was it just not possible?
I think that Hutton really wanted to test that free market and see how much he was going to make, and I honestly do not blame him one bit, but I really think that for capable backups, that Doug Armstrong really should have thrown some money at him. I mean, Jake Allen plays better when the backup isn't very good, and he doesn't have that pressure hanging over his shoulders. So far this season, he hasn't been fantastic, but he's been pretty okay. And of course, when Hutton was healthy, Allen didn't play worth a crap. So I mean, maybe it's better long term for Jake Allen, but I personally don't feel particularly confident with Johnson as our backup, at all.
Yeah, Carter Hutton only signed for $2.7 per year for 3 years with the Sabres. So I would think they still would have been able to get him for roughly about the same. They have the space technically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they figured, well, we can save some money elsewhere, and this year's really going to be Jake's year. To spoil it, but no year has been Jake's year. And that's just kind of what they were banking on. And the Blues have some really large contracts that, I mean, haven't really given them a lot of wiggle room that they've been stuck with. And I guess they figured that shipping Hutton out was the best way to kind of have some sort of wiggle room. But I just don't think that was a very good idea. He has more wins this year than the Blues do.
Yeah.
So,
It's to me, that's the question mark there, because a lot of people, we were looking at standings before the season, and I figured, even myself, the Blues are going to have a decent year. They bring in O'Reilly. They move some guys that people thought maybe weren't doing enough for, obviously, their cap hits. And if you re-sign Hutton, then you still have two decent goalies. And people project, Nashville maybe probably number one and Jets number two, or vice versa. And then Blues are maybe that third team in that division. Yeah. But the question mark was always, can Jake Allen be that true number one? And he still hasn't shown it.
Oh, no. I mean, you can pretty much set your clock by when his mid-season meltdown's going to start. It happens at the same time, mid to late December every single year, and lasts through early March. And then all of a sudden he starts playing well again. And that's just, you can't risk your entire season on a goalie that's, going to have a meltdown like that halfway through.
Yeah.
And that was a very large part of what happened last year. Between that and the Blues just playing like they were giving up down the stretch almost, and losing out on really easy points that should have gotten them into the playoffs. I mean, there are a lot of issues going on right now with this team.
All right. Before we get into some other issues and more talk about that, the Ryan O'Reilly trade, it was a pretty good one. So they moved out the contracts of Patrick Berglund and Sabatka. They did lose Tage Thompson, who could project to be a pretty decent second, third-line center. And, of course, a first-round pick in 2019 and a second-round pick all the way in 2021. Mm-hmm. But how great has O'Reilly looked? I've got him on my fantasy team. I love him.
Oh, yeah, he's been fantastic. That is probably one of the best moves that Doug Armstrong's done for a while. And to be honest, that got him a lot of goodwill this offseason that I don't think exists anymore. But this offseason, it's been – people were shocked, to be honest, that they pulled that off. Mm-hmm. But he's been great. I can't think of a single area where he hasn't he hasn't been great. I mean, he's been fantastic with faceoffs. I think he's still leading the team in scoring right now. I mean, he's been hands down. Yeah, he has 12 goals and 14 assists right now. So, I mean, hands down, he is the one thing this season. Him and the power play, those two things have been the bright spots in overall just a not very bright year.
But there's been a few injuries on the team.
Yeah.
But really, what's going on with this defense? It seems like no one's playing up to their level. There's maybe the aging fast in Bouwmeester and Gunnarsson, or are they just all off? I've seen some awful passes from Colton Parayko, and even Pietrangelo is not his usual self.
Well, I mean, it's like reading some of the interviews with some of the guys, it feels like there's like not the level of communication that there needs to be. And I think that contributes to some of the bad passing. But I mean, then you have, like you said, Carl Gunnarsson's getting older. He had off-season surgery. He's hurt again. God love Jay Bouwmeester, but he just is not what he used to be. And then you tack on the fact that he has got some of the most god-awful luck of anybody on this team. He's either on the ice for every goal against, or he'll just score the goal against. Like he did with Chicago, and he pulled that against Winnipeg, too. I mean, and he has such a huge contract that we're going to have him to the end of the season. And then Pietrangelo, I mean, his wife had triplets this summer, and I'm sure that's probably but that's probably, to me, I don't like to speculate about some of that, but I'm assuming that's probably pretty stressful. So, I mean, it's just overall, the defense on paper is okay, and then they get out on ice, and there's just, like Bouwmeester just on ice for a goal against by Detroit, just absolutely standing their stock still. Mm-hmm. So nothing looks like anybody is even remotely speaking with each other, telling people where the other guys on the ice are. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. I guess Parayko doesn't have the Grabowski effect, as I called it, because when Grabowski had his first child, he was an explosive player for the next year or 2 years right after he had his first child. So he was exciting to watch for that while.
Yeah, no, I think Pietrangelo's having the exact opposite issue. Although, I mean, if he would have turned that up times 3, I would have been happy. But he's just, and I don't think it's a leadership thing. Everybody's like, oh, the leadership on this team. I don't think it's that. I just think that between stuff going on with having 3 new kids and then, you know, the team for the longest time just not playing well. I mean, there's so many other things at issue here beyond leadership.
Well, maybe it's a bit of the management thing. They fire Mike Yeo, only a year and a half after letting Hitchcock go, and now they bring in interim Craig Berube. So is the plan just to ride Berube for the rest of the season, or why not just go get a young manager or a great one in Coach Q, Quenneville?
Yeah, I mean, Doug Armstrong, when he was asked about Coach Q, wouldn't even really even entertain it for right now. And I think part of that's probably because Quenneville's getting paid $6 million a year to not do anything, which sounds like a pretty good gig to me. But I really, he wouldn't say how long Berube was going to at the press conference introducing the new coach. So, I mean, I think that there's the option just to stick with the status quo while still looking around. But the issue is that it has always been stick with the status quo. Stick with what you have right now. And that's probably what's going to happen, is that they're just going to stick with the interim coach and ride it out for the rest of the year. And then this offseason, Doug Armstrong will see what happens, and whatever happens, happens. Which is not a particularly proactive way of addressing team issues that have been lingering for a while, but that's just kind of how the front office and how the team tends to manage stuff, is they'll just let stuff sit for a while, then fix it when they fix it. which I personally don't think is very acceptable, but that's just kind of what they do.
So I'm guessing you're thinking Doug Armstrong is going to do the same thing between the pipes, right? There's Jake Allen and Chad Johnson not really cutting it. I guess they're not looking at maybe bringing someone in. I heard rumors of maybe Jimmy Howard.
Yeah, they were discussing that during the broadcast tonight. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Howard's he's significantly more consistent and a better Jake Allen, but I also don't know what the price is going to be. They mentioned something like a first rounder as part of a package, and I don't think that Doug Armstrong really has the first rounders to deal without being able to draft anybody, So I don't know. Over the past 3 or 4 years, I haven't really had a lot of confidence in Armstrong to make any of the necessary moves. He'll still make the big moves once in a while that kind of gloss over some of the lasting issues. But as far as big, listen, we need to address this, it hasn't really been consistently done.
All right, what's a young prospect you think that could make a big impact on this Blues roster, which they might really need?
Right now, I think that Jordan Kyrou is probably the next prospect to keep an eye on. Obviously, Robert Thomas has been doing pretty well. He hasn't really exactly been scoring left and right, but he's been playing a lot better. And I just think that with maybe another year or two of just experience down in the AHL, I think that Kyrou is going to be ready to come up and score. And that's great. I mean, the team, honestly, the Blues have a fairly decent offense this year, but I'm never going to complain about another player that can actually score. I'm not going to be picky.
All right. I know it might be a bit of a long year, but where do you see the Blues finishing this season?
Oh God. Well, not where I'd like them to. I don't see them making the playoffs unless some act of God happens. I don't think they're going to continue being as horrible as they are now, because I don't really know if this is with the team that's this good on paper. I don't know if this is a sustainable thing or not, but so much of it depends on what Doug Armstrong decides to do with the coaching. But yeah, no, I think that they're probably going to finish. This is me being optimistic. Probably 5th or 6th in the Central, maybe, but they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, 9, 11, and 3 looks kind of bleak. I was hoping they would be better this year, and I enjoy watching the Blues, but it doesn't look good.
Do too, but not right now.
All right, Laura, thank you for coming on the show. You can find her on Twitter at HildyMac. That's HILDYMAC. You can find her on St. Louis Game Time on the internet. Laura, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's do some Glam Junior hockey update. And today on the show, we have guest Brock Otten. You can find him on Twitter, Brock Otten. So that's BROCKOTTEN. And he's the man behind the OHL Prospect site. That's ohlprospects.blogspot.com. Go on there, check out all his great coverings of OHL prospects. Brock, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So where are you from exactly?
Born and raised in Oakville, so I live in the Halton region in the GTA.
Nice. Do you go to all the junior games, or just mostly within the Niagara or Waterloo or Mississauga area?
About half the rinks in the O now. Try to stick to the area as most I can, though, be it Mississauga, Guelph, Kitchener. But I've been as far as Windsor, Owen Sound. It's nice being in a bunch of different barns, right? Not going to the same one over and over again.
Yeah. So how are my ex-battalion doing in North Bay? Have you gone and checked them out?
You know what? I have not been to North Bay yet. That's one of the ones I haven't been to. I haven't gone that far north Bay or Sudbury yet. But maybe one day cross it off the list.
Yeah, they've only been there for a couple of years, but they're playing much better now, it looks like.
Yeah, they're having a pretty good year. I would say a little bit surprising, especially with Stan Butler sort of stepping aside with some personal reasons, and the team has found a lot of success on the back of a really strong first line. So it's nice to see. It's good for the fans out there.
Yeah. All right. So how did you get started with blogging and then covering OHL prospects?
So about 15 years ago now, when I was just in late high school, starting university, I got a job covering the OHL for Hockey's Future back when they were sort of a big company in terms of covering junior hockey. Now they're mostly known for just a message board component, but back then they produced a lot of content. So I was covering the OHL for them on a media pass and doing interviews and writing articles, and obviously made some contacts through covering it for Hockey's Future, and ended up going to school to be a teacher. But while I was in the Niagara region, that's when the Ice Dogs moved from Mississauga to Niagara, and still had the sort of writing itch, and started up the blog using some of the connections that I had, and it's kind of blossomed into this pretty cool venture that I've been able to do at the same time as being a teacher.
And how would you recommend for somebody else maybe nowadays, starting in and getting into that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just about the content you produce. I think as long as you're producing content that's worthwhile reading, people are going to read it. There's a big market for, hockey prospects. People who follow the NHL want to know about the players that their team is going to draft, and players that their team has drafted. Junior hockey in itself has a big market. There's a lot of fans, and they want to read content as well. And you have to get out to games and make your presence known, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. A lot of the people in the scouting community are very welcoming. If you want to reach out for a quote or help with an article, they'll help. And that's sort of the one thing that I've learned is, there's no harm in asking. And most of the time, 99% of the time, people will help. And then it further spreads your name out there and helps to sort of launch whatever aspirations you might have.
Yeah, it actually helped us at Sublime Hockey as well, because we've been podcasting and talking a bit of junior hockey for a few years now. And then finally we got a media pass last year. I asked and I sent a couple of emails and I got a couple of responses, which was great, but it just made it easier for us to get some Ice Dogs media passes, and we got one, and that was pretty cool. So we usually try to go every once in a while to some of the games and talk about a few of their prospects. And even last year, I was on the fence. I was more of a move rare type of guy, other than Hag. I think Hag's a bit of a slower type guy. What do you think? In my opinion, with the new NHL, my projection is move rare might actually be a better player down the stretch than Nick Hag.
I think Hag progressed extremely well as a player. I think his mobility really improved over the course of his OHL career, and I think that's going to help him be a good pro. I don't think he's going to be a top pairing guy, and I don't think Morera will be either. So I think in terms of a career projection, I don't think either of them is going to be that top pairing guy. I know that the Vegas organization thinks very highly of Nick, and they do expect him to be a top three defenseman. Whether he settles into that role in the future, I don't know. But he's had a pretty good, solid start to his pro career, and obviously had a mind-blowingly awesome year offensively last year with the amount of goals that he scored and winning the Defenseman of the Year trophy, the Max Kaminsky. So, I think it's a toss-up. They're very different players, though, like you said. Yeah. Morera would be that sort of stay-at-home type that, like you said, fits in with the way that the NHL is played now. Quick decision-making, very good positioning defensively, is a stay-at-home stalwart type without being overly physical. I think the whole injury component is something that's going to be important for him to stay clear of. He's got to stay healthy. He missed a lot of time the last couple of years, so that's going to be big for him.
All right, before we get into a bit of World Juniors talk, what are some of the top NHL prospects you see doing well so far in the early OHL season?
Well, if we're talking about the upcoming draft, the two guys that are from the O right now that are receiving sort of first-round consideration would be Ryan Suzuki and Arthur Kaliev from Hamilton. Suzuki and Kaliev are very different players. They're almost the antithesis of each other. You've got Suzuki, this dynamic playmaking center who makes his teammates better, has terrific vision, hockey IQ, obviously the brother of Nick, the Habs Montreal Canadiens prospect and Owen Sound attack player. And then you've got Arthur Kaliev, who's a bigger-bodied winger, plays that sort of up-and-down power game, fantastic shot, fantastic release, profiles as a goal scorer. And both of them probably have a place inside the top 20. It's a down year for the OHL, though. So, I mean, those are the two names that you're going to hear come closer to the draft. There's obviously going to be some guys that inch closer as we draw closer to June. We're still so far out, but those are the two big ones. And then outside of that, I mean, we're going to talk about some guys for the World Juniors that are already drafted, you know, the Morgan Frost, the Nick Suzuki's, who I just mentioned, the Michael DiPietros, the Evan Bouchards. There's a lot of talent. There always is in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah. Is there a guy that you kind of like that's not, his name hasn't been really thrown around as maybe a top 10 guy, but you kind of like that he's a little bit lower?
In terms of the draft, I think the one guy that we've got to keep an eye on moving forward is Philip Tomasino in Niagara. He's an extremely talented player, very good in the offensive end, excellent skater, terrific hands. He started out the year in a third and fourth line role. Then when Akil Thomas got injured, he moved up to the first line and has been unreal, producing at a point per game since then. And even with them picking up Jason Robertson from Kingston and with Akil Thomas coming back from injury, they've kept him up in the lineup, and he's still producing well. And if he can keep that up, he's going to be a guy that starts to get first-round consideration and is that guy that climbs the rankings as we get closer to June.
All right, let's go into the World Juniors talk. Only a couple of weeks away, actually, nearing the end of December. So before we get into the guys that are going to make a big impact on the team, who are guys that are on the fence that might not make the team or could make the team?
Well, I think the one guy you've got to look at is Owen Tippett. And I think a lot of people consider him to be a lock given his standing as an NHL draft pick and the fact that he, almost made the Florida Panthers 2 years ago, didn't last as long in training camp this past year. He's had a very good year in the OHL. I think he's progressed very well as a more complete player. But, Hockey Canada hasn't seemed to have been the biggest fan of his so far and not inviting him previous years, and we'll see. I would imagine he has to be a lock to get an invite, but as a lock on the team, I think he's a guy that's going to be on the fence. He's going to have to be able to prove that he can do more than just score. I know that sounds cliche, but he's going to have to be able to show that he can be flexible in terms of fitting into the lineup, and as any goal scorer, he's going to have to find chemistry quickly with one of the playmaking centers, be it a guy like one of the OHL's own, like Nick Suzuki and Morgan Frost, or somebody from another league, maybe a guy like Alexis Lafreniere. How quickly he fits in at the camp is going to be really important for him. So he's sort of the first guy that I think of when people mention not somebody who's a lock, but somebody who has a good chance of making the team anyway.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, go ahead.
Outside of that, at forward, I think another guy that is going to surprise people with how well he does at the camp and getting an invite would be Hamilton's Mackenzie Entwistle. I know that Hockey Canada is a big fan of his, and he's a guy that can slide up and down the lineup. He could play that sort of big-bodied role, net presence that could do well on a first, second-line role, or he could be a penalty killer, fourth-line checker, brings speed, size, grit, determination, all of those things to the ice, and had a really good Canada-Russia series just recently. At least in my opinion, I thought he did. And he's going to be one of those names that people say, well, okay, he wasn't an extremely high draft pick. The numbers in the OHL don't jump off the page at you, but he's a coach's dream because he can slide anywhere up and down the lineup, play any position, and do it well.
Cool. And anyone on the back end you think that may or may not make the roster?
Well, I think what we'll end up seeing is a lot of the back end coming from the WHL or the Q, and even some of the NCAA guys like Ian Mitchell. I think Evan Bouchard is the one guy that we're really going to see back there from the O. And obviously he's going to be an integral component to Team Canada. I don't think there's any chance that he doesn't make the team.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then who are your guys that you think are really going to impact this team going down the stretch? We're all going to be yelling their names in January.
I think the most important player, not even just talking about the OHL specifically, but I think one of our most important players this year is going to be Michael DiPietro. I don't see this team being as naturally gifted offensively as we've seen in previous years, or maybe even at least the last couple of years anyway. I don't think there's a real dynamic component to our team, at least in terms of skating ability, especially up front on our forward unit. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on our goaltending. It's going to have to be better than it's been in recent years. Now, our goaltending has been good. Carter Hart, has been good. But it's been a while since I think we've had a goalie that's stolen a tournament for us. And I don't think it's going to have to be that bad. I don't think our defense is going to be that bad. I think we will score goals, but I do think that whether it's DiPietro or a guy like Ian Scott out of the WHL, I think our goaltending is going to have to be excellent. And DiPietro is that one guy that is going to be a difference maker, one way or another.
Yeah, in terms of Ian Scott, obviously a Maple Leaf prospect, I'm guessing that he wasn't even an afterthought before the season started.
Yeah, it's always interesting, especially in terms of goaltending, right? You got a guy like last year, Colton Point came out of nowhere, had a fantastic start to his NCAA season at Colgate, ended up coming in, taking a job away from a guy like DiPietro, although even though he was, an underager by a year, I think most people expected him to be on the team last year, and then Colton Point comes in and ends up stealing that backup spot behind Carter Hart. And it really is. You never know at that position that some guy steps up, has a fantastic camp, and forces the hand of Team Canada.
Yep.
And sorry, just to interrupt. Scott is a guy, like you said, he's been unreal in the WHL so far. The numbers that he's posting have been incredible. And it'll be interesting to see how he does at the training camp. With a little more pressure on him and, a little bit more skill coming his way. It'll be interesting to see him and Sarah DiPietro battle and whether another guy can step in, who the other invites end up being. Will be interesting to see when that list comes out.
When are the dates exactly, roughly, for camp, and then when the whole boxing starts?
That's a good question. The exact dates, I can't remember. I think we're looking at the second week of December usually when everything starts to kickstart. So I would imagine we get the list maybe next week as to who's invited, probably early next week. And then from there, the camp starts up and we'll get things going. And it's World Junior Hockey season again. I mean, everybody's favorite time of the year.
Brock, thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully we get you on the show right before everything starts riling up, and we can talk a little bit more about who's on the team and how we expect them to be playing. Brock, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
Okay, time for a little friendly bet. Finally, we're going to be doing this friendly bet. We've been talking about it for a while. And the question is here, how many Canadian teams do you think will make the playoffs in the Western Conference? Logan, what do you believe?
I got to go with 3. I'm going to leave Vancouver is going to be the odd one out. Calgary is sitting pretty. They got a little cushion, even if they stumble a little bit. But I think they got the pieces there to make, I don't think they're going to make a run, but they'll make it to the show. Winnipeg obviously is also sitting very pretty and will be a cup contender unless they lose a top scorer. And say Edmonton's going to squeak in. They got enough pieces there, and the new coach Hitchcock will take a big stick and make him go north-south.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take 2 or less then to make playoffs. I'm still actually on the fence with Calgary. They've gained a lot of ground right now, and they're up there. They're number 1 in the Pacific. I'm a little surprised. I didn't think they would be that high up there, but that division isn't the greatest, especially this year for some reason.
It's a gong show, honestly.
Yeah, even the Sharks, I thought they would be a lot better than this, and they're not playing that well. Anaheim's recovered, so they're back in there, and it is what it is. But even Winnipeg, it's kind of weird seeing them in a wild card spot. But yeah, I figured they'd be 1 or 2 in the division. For their division at least. But I even think Calgary could have been like a wild. I projected Calgary as a wild card team, so I still had them on the fence. So I still think they're going to drop a little bit, maybe not fully out. So there might be 2 teams in the playoffs. And Edmonton's also was always on the fence for me too. I had Calgary or Edmonton maybe making the playoffs. So I'm still thinking one of the 2 might not make it. And right now, it is Edmonton. They're just outside of the playoffs right now. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And I know Hitchcock is a guy that can really get a team going quickly, and he might be able to get them in. But it's a long season, and who's between the pipes right now for the Oilers?
Right now it's Koskinen, the $2.5 million man of the KHL. I had my doubts. Last game he did post a shutout against LA. I can't remember who they're playing. It was 0-0 going into overtime. So I mean, he's not the flashiest goaltender. His rebound control is kind of all over the place, but he seems to be getting some wins. So that's all you can ask of him right now.
Yeah. You shut out the LA Kings. They're so good. Their best player is on the 4th line.
I know. I have him in my fantasy league. I'm trying to do I drop Kovalchuk? But he's their leading point getter.
Why is he on the 4th line? Willie Desjardins, what are you doing? You ruined the Canucks. You're just going to go ruin the LA Kings. Don't go close to Canada, please.
Maybe he's still a Canuck fan. That's why he's putting him on the 4th line.
Oh, my goodness. So, yay, good for Edmonton. They've got a goalie that can shut out the LA Kings right now. Oh, my goodness. So that's the goaltending thing is still a bit of an issue for me. So I've got the Oilers maybe sitting on the outside come near the playoffs. Poor McDavid. All right. Before we end the show, we've got a mailbag question. Somebody proposed to us and said, what do you think is going to be the end result with Nylander? Is he going to be a Maple Leaf by next season? That's a tough one. I actually truly still think he will be. A lot of people think otherwise. A lot of fans don't want him near the team anymore, and a lot of fans still love him and thinks that he's still as good as a Mitch Marner. What do you think, Logan?
Marner may have actually surpassed him, but it's I think Nylander will be a Leaf. I think Dubas wants him there. I think Babcock wants him there. I think everybody wants him there, and when he does eventually get there, fans will be like, okay, we're glad to have him. He's just another explosive piece in an arsenal that is the Leafs. And I think he'll sign for 5-6 years. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have to make room for him after 3 or 4, or move room for somebody else after 3 or 4, so maybe then you ship him out, but...
Yeah, I'm with what you said earlier on in the episode that, yeah, if they do sign maybe a 2-year bridge deal with Nylander, then, and other players on the team kind of, fill the role really well and getting more goals, then maybe you do have to move him because you don't want the same issue happening again in 2 years down the road. But if it's a 5-year contract or longer, I have no clue why they would want to really move him. Especially if he's making that roughly just under $7 million contract. Yeah. So I'm saying he's going to end up and stay with Leafs for at least a fair while more than a year. All right, that's it for this week's Jablam Hockey. Check us out next week.